Hey, it's Colton Johnson. I'm about to look at my video. I've already glanced through it a few times, but I have a few thoughts on it. Um, when I was going through this, I think that I overestimated my dad's abilities. So, going into this, he's been listening to me play the trombone for, 8 to 10 years now. So I was expecting it to be like a lot easier than it was, but that being said, we adjusted and we fixed it on the fly, and it turned out to be a good experience overall. Um, Originally I had this plan, and it was based around teaching the melody Ode to Joy, and I thought that would be a good easy one because it's 5 notes, and it was going to be a good time. But we ended up not quite getting to that, and that's okay. What we did was we did the pregame salute. So we did basically a major third's worth of sound. So it went from, instead of it being the B flat to D like it usually is, what we did was we did a gliss so that we could get connection between and consistent sound between D flat and F in the staff on the trombone from the start, instead of breaking partials and all that stuff already. So I really had to kind of think of that on the fly, because I was like, first we're going to do this super cool one, and we're going to be good to go, and it's going to go super well. Because in previous experiences when I taught beginners, it was snap, 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 good to go. But this time it was a little bit different. That being said, we did a lot of playing back and forth, and I really enjoyed getting to teach him. My dad is such a cute character, you know what I mean? I did not realize that the biggest problem, I think, that was keeping him from being able to make a super great sound was a dysfunction in his embouchure, and it was a puffiness that came on the top lip. So the top lip puffed, and the bottom lip stayed normal-ish, which is a classic thing. And because the top lip was puffing, so were the cheeks a little bit, and that was keeping the sound from being in the mouthpiece and vibrating between the lips, and it kept a lot of the air in the back of his mouth. And so what we did was, at first we did to get the motion of the lips moving, we did some engine revving, which is basically like doing a lip trill but going high and low. When you rev the engine, you go higher. It's a good little tool that I've found helps students to be able to kind of get over the silliness that comes with the trombone. But it worked pretty well. And then we went on to the mouthpiece and made some sounds on the mouthpiece. And he was pretty good at matching on the mouthpiece. But it was pretty instantaneous that we figured out that we'd have to take it down a little bit from what the plan was, but that's okay. It was good to keep on the fly like that. I simply wish that I would have had a plan for if things would have gone awry. We did a lot of playing back and forth and making sounds, which is modeling and role playing is a good idea. And by the end, he was making the sound that he could for where he was at. But at the same time, because I didn't have really a thing to follow as much, and I intended to use that, felt a little bit uncomfortable about that. but it's okay. I mean, we still got some good work done. I feel like we could have. I feel like I could have. Looking back, I feel like we could have made some sounds on the trombone first, and then gone back to the mouthpiece, and then gone back to the trombone, rather than it being like lips, then mouthpiece, then trombone. Maybe like alternate like small piece versus large piece, and make sure that everything was working well. I kind of liked my dad is very mechanically and like math inclined, so we had there was a little like tangent into like the idea of what partials were. And so I described it as being different shelves, rather than trying to explain to him what like the partial was. But I was like, right now we're operating with two partials, or two shelves, which were F and the B flat above it. And then what we did was we went down and we went to the lower partial, which was the F partial, and we did glisses from D flat to F. So like D, D, D. We even made it a solo so that he could feel like he was like involved with the activity. What I did first was I do the dun dun, and then he'd do the little gliss dun. And by the end of the lesson, he was able to do the whole thing. He wasn't necessarily tonguing in the like pedagogically sound way yet, but that being said, that can always be fixed. He got to make something that resembled the pregame sound without having to know a bunch of theory, and without having to go through a bunch of crazy experiences. He got to do that from the get-go, and I thought that was something that went well about the situation, even though I was a little bit uncomfortable, just because it's kind of weird recording when you have to do all this. In this specific part of the video, around the 27-minute mark, we were doing some modeling, and to this time I had just taken for granted that he was able to audiate. You know what I mean? Like a skill that a lot of us music majors have, that we just assume that other people probably also have, which some people do, and they are able to match the sounds that we make, but some people have to have a little bit of coaching for that. So I assumed that going into this, when we were singing, he'd be able to do it. But what was funny was that I sang a D flat concert, and then he sang an A flat concert below it. And so I was like, what I do when I do with young students and with some of my older ones is, when a pitch is lower singing wise than what it needs to be, I'll point up. And so basically what we did was we walked through a chromatic scale in a fourth to get to it. And it had us giggling, because it was just something that I assumed would just be super easy peasy. So this next little part was basically explaining what a tongue stop was and why not to do it. So basically what he was doing was da ta ta, yep, rather than ta ta ta. Listen. Wait, not this time. I think it's the next one.
This time I want you to just go.
Hear that? Pedagogically, I had to like say that was a no-no from the start. Even though he's not necessarily getting the best sound, I wanted to make sure that he wasn't gonna do a zit sound because this just doesn't sound pleasing to me here. I mean, maybe within a jazz idiom it does, but within a classical player, not a good thing unless you're playing like Stravinsky or something crazy like that. There he went. Hey, the minor third is getting a lot closer than what it was. And he's starting to consistently make that sound on the D flat.
And then you'll do your slide, okay? So what it'll end up sounding like altogether is... But all that you're going to do is I'm going to go... And you're going to go... You think we can do that together? Yeah! For right now, it's not important.
You see, I had to just cut my losses on that one. See, he picked up on the fact that airspeed, and as you go higher, it gets faster, like from the get-go. I thought that was really, really cool because, like, a lot of people don't really get that. You know what I mean? And looking back, you can see clearly on his. Let's see if we can get this. See at his on his cheek, it's expanding, and that's because his front lip is puckered rather than it being flat, and allowing the bottom lip to do the majority of the not puffing but expanding so that it can like facilitate a good sound. I think that within this time I like spent a little bit too much time on the mouthpiece. Might have been able to like make a better sound and stuff if we hadn't spent as much time on the small piece. So, hello, zing to it.
Okay, let's try I'll play the... Then you give me the slide in.
Slide in. Not to make it clear that trombone won't necessarily get the most flashy thing, but I thought it was a good lesson overall, and it was a fun experience to share, for sure.